Welcome to the Executive Coaching Podcast, where executive coach Alicia Cowan will discuss leadership topics and coaching solutions to tackle the most difficult problems that keep you from leading your team to success.
Hey there, senior leaders. It's Alicia Cowan. Welcome to episode number 56 of the Executive Coaching Podcast, and the first episode that I am recording in 2025. So if you're listening to this in January 2025, Happy New Year. I am so excited to get this new year started. We are just coming off the week of the holidays as I'm recording this, and we had such a great time. We had family in town for the week of Christmas, and then friends in town for the week of New Year's. And so the house was just like big flow of energy and lots of people coming and going. And it was really fun. This is our first full week in our home, first full year, in our home. And we had just moved in this time last year. And so we were just in a way different place heading into the holidays than we were last year. It was very hectic, and we were still new and moving into the house, and still had friends and family over, but it was, we felt way more prepared and settled this time. So it was a lot of fun. And this week, we're headed back into the routine of things. We're going to get started on just getting back into the normal day-to-day habits that we have, school, work, etc. So that's where we're at, coming off of a very great holiday season, and very grateful to have some time to spend with friends and family. And it was just such a good time. And I've been now I have some quiet time. So I'm reflecting on 2024 and what results that I had created and what I had accomplished. And also, I don't do resolutions, but I do set annual calendar year goals for myself. And so been thinking about what I want to do and what I want to tackle in 2025. So more to come on that, but I want to share, I've been thinking a lot about, as a leader, what we can do to build new habits. And again, I'm not someone that's huge on resolutions, but I do believe in building goals and habits for yourself that you want to create, and things that you want to do, and goals that you set for your own growth and development. And so one of the habits I think that would be potentially great to look at for some leaders out there would be to break the cycle of holding back on delivering really effective, powerful feedback. And I think that, especially this time of year, we're typically going into performance review season. So I've been talking a lot about it. And I think sometimes we hold back on having direct, clear, kind, honest conversations around performance. It's one of the most common topics that I talk about and hear about from leaders. And why I think that is because a lot of times people feel fearful of someone else's reaction. They want to control what the other person is going to think, feel, and do. They don't want to feel uncomfortable going into that conversation. And they really want to try to make sure the person really feels some type of way after they receive the feedback. And that's just not always possible. We can't always control somebody else's reaction. And so a lot of times because of this, people, wanting to people please and be liked and to control other people, sometimes people just avoid it altogether. And so that's why I say breaking the cycle would be a really great habit. And not only for yourself, if this is something you identify with, but maybe you're great at it and you feel totally comfortable delivering feedback and feel like it's been a strength of yours. But if you are a senior leader, I guarantee that people working for and around you don't necessarily have the same strength. If you are really strong at it, not everyone is. And so I think it's really powerful and important to think about as a leader, how do you coach people and how do you help people deliver powerful feedback? And so I think it's important to think about why we deliver feedback, and crafting really honest, thoughtful feedback. It's really truly meant to help improve and in service to the other person. It's really, truly, it's just someone's thoughts when you're delivering feedback. And that's another important fact to note, is that when you deliver feedback, it is, in a sense, subjective most times, right? It's literally your thoughts about the situation on how someone's performing. But if you can deliver feedback in a way, even if it's from your vantage point, that is in support of and caring for the other person, and if you can get there to you understand the core root is really to be helpful, and not like in a dictatorial situation where you're telling the other person, or trying to control them. But if you're coming that from a place of care, I think it can really be powerful to help someone in their career and help them move forward. So I think that's really an important thing to note, is why you're delivering it, why you want to deliver it. And then I think that people can help themselves by moving forward and feeling confident because they understand that even though it's their opinion, feedback is someone's opinion about someone else's performance, but your opinion can matter. And it can also be loosely held, meaning that, yes, your opinion is subjective. Yes, it is your observations of the behavior of someone else. And you can also be confident in delivering it, but also be loosely held in your belief and go forward with a sense of curiosity, openness to understand, like, hey, this is my perspective. And I'm curious about what you think and what your observations of your own behavior or what your own thoughts of your own behavior are. Because at the root and the core of this is how do we help you move forward by potentially addressing this behavior change or not? And so I think if we can understand why we're doing it, it's truly to help someone's career and to understand that we don't need to be afraid of someone else's reaction, or we don't have to feel the need to control somebody else. Then we can, I think, actually move forward and start to practice delivering feedback with repetition. So I think repetition and practice are massive when it comes to being really great at delivering powerful feedback and getting to the point where you're a really strong coach. And if this is something that you or your team really struggle with, coaching absolutely can help. I've helped lots of leaders go through and practice delivering feedback and making them better and more effective at getting their message across clearly. But today, what we're going to talk about is some really practical tips and tricks in order to practice breaking this habit. And again, so maybe this is a New Year's goal that you have for yourself or for your team. And I think it'll help to create delivering great feedback, whether it's in the performance review or just in a day-to-day interaction, to help people in 2025 and beyond. So we're going to talk a little bit about what those behavior changes or habits are, what they could look like for you as a leader. And then we're going to talk about a very tactical tool that I like to use for each of these potential habit changes around delivering feedback. All right, so the first habit to build is to move towards being very professionally mature and taking out the drama when delivering performance review feedback. So when we want to move towards professional maturity, and then I call it in simplistic terms, taking out the drama, when we want to do that, a lot of times, again, leaders feel the need to sometimes match how someone responds when they're delivering feedback. So when I talk about professional maturity, when you go into a feedback situation, you intentionally go into it knowing how you want to feel. And a feeling could be very simple in terms of like, I want to be curious, I want to be calm, I want to be maybe rational, maybe, I don't know, professional is just a really great overlay, right? Just to feel very like put together and calm and cool and collected, right? And that's really important to set the tone as you go into the conversation. How do I want to feel and how do I want to think when I go into this? And then at times, though, people get into those conversations, and a lot of times people can react in a way that leaders feel like they need to respond to. So sometimes when people get feedback, listen, no one loves receiving feedback, okay? It's not always the most pleasant experience, no matter who you are, no matter what level you're at, no matter what type of feedback you're getting, no matter how great the person delivering the feedback is. It's just not always the most favorite thing, right? Because people go into fight or flight when receiving feedback sometimes. And so when people react maybe in a way that's less favorable, maybe it's defensive. Maybe it's hurt or emotional and sad. And maybe it's, I don't know, anger and frustration that comes up. Sometimes the person delivering it feels the need to like match that emotion. Maybe they get frustrated too because the other person's frustrated, or maybe they get upset because the other person's upset, right? And, I think it's really important to, again, you can remain empathetic and you can understand, like, hey, I understand this is a frustrating situation, or I understand this might be upsetting you, but without a way that you need to match your own emotion to their emotion. So when I say being professionally mature, it's meaning you can remain in that calm, cool, collected space while being empathetic and still being a human and responding appropriately to the person's emotions without matching where they're at. And so a lot of times when I try to prepare a leader to go in and be professionally mature is, one, decide how you want to be ahead of time. Decide how you want to show up ahead of time. And that's where it's really important to set that stage and decide, how do I want to show up? And another way that I like to help people take some of the emotion out of the conversation when they're delivering feedback is to get really clean and clear in their message, and to make sure their message is not going to have any feedback that is not as factual or close to factual as it possibly can be. Because remember, I mentioned feedback can be very subjective. It is your thoughts and feelings. And I think it's important to separate out thoughts, feelings from the facts when you're doing a feedback conversation. So here's the tool I want to discuss. I call this the feedback download. And it's really simple to do. When you have some feedback that feels like it might be a little bit heated, whether it's either on your side or maybe even delivering it, somebody might respond in a type of way, do a feedback download by grabbing a blank piece of paper or a blank document on your laptop. I personally prefer pens to paper always. However, it's great, whatever tool that you're going to use, to write out unfiltered everything you're thinking and feeling about the situation and the person that you're going to be delivering the feedback to. I want it to be as raw as possible. You put pen on paper without editing yourself and get it all out. Be unhinged about it, okay? Because this document should not go anywhere beyond you and having it in your possession. So don't block yourself from what you're going to put on this piece of paper. Use it as a way to like detox and cleanse out your brain of all the thoughts that are swirling around, all the feedback that you want to deliver. Okay. So once you've got it all out of your system, maybe it's like a 5-minute timer and you get it all out there. Once you're complete with that, go back through, read it a couple times. And as you go through each time, either highlight or circle or whatever notation that you want, all the statements that are factual. Now, I know this may seem super obvious about what factual means, but factual feedback is something would be able to be proven in a court of law. It's something so completely objective that another person would completely agree with the statement and say that is 100% true without question. Facts are not opinions. They are not subjective. They are not vague. They are not unclear. They are not questionable. Okay. They're factual. And so when you go through and make sure that you've got all of those notated in your statement about what is factual. Why this exercise is important, why to do this ahead of time is so powerful, is because we need to sort out the way that we are thinking and feeling about this factual situation from how, we're perceiving it. And it's important to get those statements out because it helps us formulate, number one, what is true and factual versus what is not. And then we start to think about questions around, okay, what else do I need to know then? Why is this actually happening? What do they need help with? And how do I address this behavior? So it helps us understand the facts of the situation and the behavior change that we need to look at. And then what is the actual root cause? And what else do I need to find out? I may not know the root cause. So what questions do I need to ask in order to find out what's going on here to help support this person? Okay. So really powerful exercise, and it helps get some of this emotion out of the conversation before you go into it. Okay. So that's step one. Okay. All right. So step number two. Another thing that I hear a lot of times is people really want other people's feedback on some of their team members. I call this doing just a 360 feedback review. And so when you're headed into performance reviews or any other time of year, a great option to have is to be able to send a really quick, simplistic email to set up this conversation or email response that you're going to get from somebody about the team member that you're trying to deliver this performance review feedback to. A lot of times leaders like write out these performance reviews and they'll come to me and they'll ask things like, is, what I'm seeing or thinking about the associate, is it validated with or calibrated with what other people are thinking? And I'm not really sure what the service levels are like. And I'm wondering if I can get honest feedback. And a lot of times they're not asking some of the either internal or external clients that your associates are working with. So we all have a customer, an end customer. So whether it's an internal customer that we support or an external customer that we support, normalizing feedback from that end customer in order to improve is a really great key step in ensuring that we get that feedback to not remain stagnant and make sure we're improving our deliverables, right? And so I advise a really simple tool to help in getting this feedback is just crafting a super simple email. It can be 3 quick questions and something along the lines of question number one is, what is going well? How are service levels meeting your expectations or exceeding your expectations, right? Something as simple as that. What's going well? Number 2, is there anywhere where our service levels could be improved? Is there anything that we can be doing better for you? And then the third simple question, is there anything else that you think that I need to know or anything that you think is important as a part of this conversation that I'm going to be having regarding feedback and delivering performance review feedback? Okay. And what I like to do is I send this email and I like to let the person that I'm asking for the feedback from, I like to either let them respond by either emailing me back, or if they prefer to speak in person or call me or set up a meeting to talk about it face to face, allow that to be an option too, because everybody communicates a little bit differently. And this request can go to anybody that's in your circle of influence that you feel like would be great in order to receive some feedback from for your team member. In addition to those 3 questions to the person that I'd like to get the feedback from, I also like to prepare an email to the associate just to let them know that I will be soliciting feedback from their business partners and to expect it. I think it's helpful as well to get their input on which partners that they work with the most and who would be able to provide the best perspective. I also want them to know that it's happening so they're not caught off guard and they're not surprised. No one likes to be caught off guard by receiving feedback from someone they didn't know that was going to be delivering it. So it's also helpful just to give them that heads up. All right. One last tip here. I like to also include in the email to my colleague, I let them know that I'm going to provide the feedback and how I'm going to provide it. I let them know that I'm going to keep it, confidential, but perhaps if they disclose something that's like not completely anonymous, I let them know that too. So I let them know if they are going to share some detail with me, they can't be always perfectly anonymous, but I will try to keep it as confidential as possible because I think it's important. Again, normalizing and delivering feedback is so important to improve that relationship, to make sure that you're hearing them and listening to them if they are a client. And it's also important to make sure they know there's going to be no recourse as a part of this feedback conversation. So all things that are important to kind of state right up front. All right, so hope number 2 is helpful. All right, number 3, the third step here is now that you've got a couple buckets of feedback, right? You've got your feedback download that you did in step 1, then you've got some feedback from your colleagues. The next step is I like to think about how to get unstuck or unblock the writer's block. So this next tool is called the feedback mind map that I'm going to take you through. But what I hear and what I'm solving for here is a lot of times I hear people preparing for delivering performance reviews or delivering some type of feedback, and they say things like, I'm not really sure what to say. And I don't know what to write. And I don't even know where to start. And sometimes leaders even just get to the point where they're writing the review and they're like, there's not even much to write in the review because I've already told them all this throughout the year. So I'm not even sure why I'm repeating it in the review. So they end up with like a couple lines in the performance review. And sometimes they get stuck and they're like, I can't remember what happened a year ago. And when I open up that review form, I just stare at the screen and go totally blank. And a lot of people will even say and make an excuse to say, like, well, I'm not even sure why you need to write anything down because it's all about the conversation that you're going to have. So if you thought any of those, all of them are very common. And I will say, from like years and years of working in HR and as a manager myself, I will say it's really important to put things into the performance review document because it does serve as a historical record that really follows the associate throughout their life cycle and their career at that company. And it can really help make or break any future decisions that you may need to have as a part of their performance conversations. So, things like promotions or movement and lateral movement, or if they are not performing up to standard, the ability to put someone in a performance plan if they're not performing, it's all going to stem from what's put into that performance review. And so clarity has to be in there, whether you've had the conversation, the verbal conversation, or not. And so it helps to have clarity between the supervisor and the associate. And the best way to do that on the record is to put it into the review. And so it also can be encouraging for the associate to really engage with the conversation and to have a very clear path forward because it's written. And so I don't want to go into it too much, but those are some of the benefits of putting the right amount of effort into the written review. I am a firm believer that the conversation is where the most impact will happen. However, too little information in the review can be detrimental as well. So find that right balance. Don't have to overdo it. But to get through that like writer's block and getting stuck, the tool that I like to use is called just a simple feedback mind map. So once you have that feedback download and your 360 feedback, then you can start to really craft the body of the review by starting with a feedback mind map. It's a simple tool just to get your thoughts flowing. And how you can do this is, again, taking a blank piece of paper or a blank document on your laptop. I like to start with a sheet of paper and put the associate's name in the middle with a circle around it. Then you can pick a side, either the left or the right, and then you can start to write everything that went well this year on one side of the piece of paper, drawing lines to like some of the like bulleted thoughts. And then on the other side of the paper, you can write any other feedback that you want for them to work on, any skill gaps that they might still have, any developmental feedback that maybe wasn't as positive for the year, anything like that that might come up, right? So just use those two pieces of the sides of the paper to get your major headlines out and start just brainstorming. And again, this doesn't have to be overdone. 5-10 minutes just to sort out your thoughts and start brainstorming on what ideas you have will be a really great way just to start beating the writer's block and not getting stuck by staring at a blank performance review screen. So once those ideas are flowing, then you can start to view that content that you've drafted on this feedback mind map and start picking out themes and highlights that you can then expand upon. And this brings me to step number 4. One thing that I hear a lot of times after performance reviews are delivered are that associates still maybe aren't clear on what they need to do, and they're not aligned with their supervisor. And so, at times I'll either talk to the supervisor or the associate afterwards, and they'll say things like, I'm still not sure what I need to work on, or everything was great and I'm not really sure what direction I need to head in. And so I think it's really important to negate that. A tool that I like to use is, after you've got this feedback mind map complete out of step 3, a great way to close that out to ensure you have a super clear message to deliver is to use this exercise called the billboard headline for performance reviews. What I like to do is look at your mind map of feedback. Then, as you're like noting, what are the themes? What things like can connect together? What dots am I connecting after looking at all of this feedback? And after looking at this mind map of feedback and after looking at everything you've collected, just crafting very cleanly 2 to 3 sentences about what you want the associate to know. How I boil this down is, if you had the option of boiling the entire performance review or feedback delivery that you want down to just a couple of things that they have to know when they walk away, these are those things. And so this has to be the most clear and concise message, and to make sure that the associate, it will land and stick. And so an example could be, overall did a great job of hitting, sales goals and sales targets this year, really did a great job of like driving those results. And then maybe some developmental feedback that you have is to work on clarity in presentations, whatever, right? Just being super clear into being like, this is the overall strength that you have. Here is the overall opportunity that you have. And just those are the headlines that you have to walk away with. And again, those are examples I'm literally just coming up with the top of my head. So you can probably be way more clear and concise when you're thinking of it. But just make sure that that message, that quote unquote billboard headline, is so obvious and so apparent to both of you at the end of the conversation that when they get asked, how did your performance review go? They could summarize it very simply. Here's what I'm doing well. Here's what I need to work on. Simple, clean, clear. Okay. All right. So there you have it. Those are 4 tips that I have. If you are in the mindset for 2025 where you want to get better at delivering feedback and breaking this habit and breaking the cycle of holding back on delivering clean, clear, great performance review feedback, then hopefully these 4 steps have helped you. They have helped me when I'm thinking about and trying to get to a point where I can deliver clear and concise feedback. And so this is something I do all the time. And I help leaders through this and their teams really deliver and craft solid performance reviews so that there is clarity, there is confidence, and there is just great communication between an associate and their direct report. So hopefully it helps. If you need any help with this, you know where to reach me. Come to my website, aliciacowancoaching.com. It's ELISIAKEOWN.com. And I would be so happy to hear from you. Talk to you soon. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Executive Coaching Podcast with Alicia Cowan. If you're ready to have an executive coach who's ready to help you lead your team to success, then book an introductory call at aliciacowancoaching.com/call.